Good afternoon, everybody. It's 2 o'clock. If we can start the meeting, thank you. Welcome to this annual meeting of the Fire Authority. If I can take agenda item 1, please, and that's nominations for position of chair. Councillor Murphy.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Councillor Chris Morris.
And is there a seconder for that, please? Councillor.
Happy to second, thank you.
And are there any other nominations for the position of chair? No other nominations. I will just ask for a show of hands, please. All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. That vote is carried. Councillor Morris, you are duly elected as chair. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for your patience. That bit is always awkward for everyone. I'd like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching the live stream of this meeting via the Fire Services YouTube page. The Fire Authority allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to use social media during the meeting. Can I ask, though, that everyone present turns their mobile phones to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place? There is no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we will all make our way out via the nearest available fire exits. The muster point is in the car park to the rear of the building. So with no further ado, we will move on to item 2, which is the appointment of vice chair. I would like to begin by nominating Andrew Bond for that position. Do we have a second?
Can I second, please, Chair?
Thank you, Councillor Malinsky. Do we have any other nominations for this role? Thank you then. On that basis, Councillor Bond is confirmed as Vice Chair for the municipal year 2025 to 26. We will now move on to item number 3 on the agenda, which is apologies for absence and declarations of interest. Would Tamar please report any apologies for absence?
No apologies received, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest not previously disclosed? Perfect. On that basis, then, we will move on to agenda item number 4, which is minutes of the Fire Authority meeting held on the 13th of February 2025 and the associated action log. We are being asked to approve the minutes of the meeting held on that date as an accurate record. If any member wants to raise a question on the accuracy of the minutes only, can they do so now? So I see no objections, so we will take that as unanimously carried. Moving on to the action log, do members have any questions on the action log? Perfect. On that basis, then, we will move on. So we are asked to note that action log for the minutes. We will now move on to agenda item number 5, which is the chair's announcements. As this is our annual meeting and we have a relatively full agenda, these announcements have purposely been kept short. However, there will be some additional general information attached to the minutes of this meeting, which will be circulated in due course. Firstly, though, although the service has already observed tributes, as this is the first Fire Authority meeting since, I would like us to observe a minute's silence to honour the memory of and pay our respects to the two firefighters, Jenny Logan and Martin Sadler, and the member of the public, David Chester, who died during the tragic major incident in Bicester last month. Thank you, everyone. This tragic incident brings home the very real risks faced by our operational colleagues daily. The fire service is a close-knit community, and our thoughts remain with all those involved, their families, friends, and colleagues. Secondly, the recent election results have resulted in a significant change in our proportionality. I'm new to the authority and would like to formally welcome the other 8 new members. You all know who you are. And sincerely thank Councillors Dew, Gowing, Hawthorne, Kindersley, Ray, Reynolds, Smith, Slatter and Taylor for their significant contributions to the work of the Fire Authority during their respective tenures, some of which have spanned several decades. Since 2021, Councillor Murphy has been chair of the authority, and I'm advised by officers that they have found her to be highly supportive, facilitating genuine debate across the membership. Always an advocate of the service with her stalwart support, numerous funding challenges have been successfully negotiated, allowing investment in the service. Perhaps the most obvious examples of which were the opening of a state-of-the-art training facility and fire station in Huntingdon, and the achievement of another positive HMIC FRS inspection result. Edna, thank you for handing over the authority in such good order. I look forward to meeting both the challenges and opportunities ahead and continuing to work collaboratively, building on what has already been achieved and delivering a safer, brighter future for our county and its residents. We will now move to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 6, appointments to committees and outside bodies. Can I ask Tamar Obiat-Ham, our Democratic Services Officer, to introduce this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly introduce the report. Following the elections, there's been a change to the County Council proportionality affecting the Fire Authority membership. The Liberal Democrat group now has 2 additional seats on the Fire Authority, so that brings it up to 8, and the Conservative group has 4 fewer, so that's down to 3. Reform UK has 2, and the Green Party has 1. There were no changes to the Labour seats, which is 2, or the Peterborough First seat, which is 1. I circulated the appointments to all of the committees and outside bodies to the committee to Fire Authority yesterday, and everyone should have a hard copy with them now. So if you've got any questions, I'm happy to take questions.
Members, do we have any questions on this subject? On that basis, then, we are being asked to agree the schedule of appointments in Appendix 1 and as summarised there. I imagine broad consensus here, so we'll do this on the basis of dissent. Would anybody please raise their hands if they do not wish to support this motion? On that basis, then, it is duly carried. And we will move to agenda item number 7, which is appointment of the committee chairs and vice chairs for both the Policy and Resources Committee and the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. We will begin with the chair of the Policy and Resources Committee. Do we have any nominations for chair?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to nominate Councillor Neil Boyce, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bond. And do we have a second? Councillor Murphy? Do we have any other nominations for this post? Well, thank you very much for your time and consideration. On that basis, Councillor Boyce is confirmed as chair of the Policy and Resources Committee for the municipal year 2025 to 2026. We now move to the appointment of vice chair of the Policy and Resources Committee. Do we have any nominations for vice chair? Councillor Murphy.
I'd like to nominate Chris Poulton, please.
And do we have a second for that nomination? Councillor Whelan. And do we have any other nominations for this post? Well, thank you all. Councillor Poulton is therefore confirmed as Vice Chair of the Policy and Resources Committee for the municipal year 2025 to 26. We now move to the appointment of Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Do I have any nominations for that role? I would like to nominate, therefore, Christine Whelan for that role. Do I have a second? Edna, Councillor Murphy, thank you. Well, thank you all very much. Councillor Whelan, first of all, are there any other nominations for that role? Thank you very much. Councillor Whelan is confirmed as Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for the municipal year 2025 to 26. We now move to the appointment of Vice Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Do I have any nominations for that role?
I'd like to nominate Jennifer Maliski.
Thank you, Councillor Whelan. Do we have a second? Councillor Murphy, thank you. Do we have any other nominations for this role? Well, thank you. On that basis, Councillor Malinowski is confirmed as Vice Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for the municipal year 2025 to 2026. Moving on then to agenda item number 8, which is a review of the community risk management and plan for the 2024 to 29 period and our performance. Can I ask Tamsin Murphy, Assistant Director for Service Transformation, to introduce this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. So I'd like to take you through our annual review of the Community Risk Management Plan. We also refer to that as our CRMP, so apologies for the acronym if I slip into it. The CRMP is a 5-year plan, and at the end of every year we do a review to see in terms of the detailed action plan that sits underneath that, what exactly have we achieved and what are our plans for next year, and do we need to refocus any activities. So this report gives you some of the highlights of what we've achieved and where we've had to slow things down, and it also at the end gives you the performance overview for the year too. So I'll just run you through. Our community risk management plan is broken down into 4 pillars that we focus all activity around. So they focus on people excellence, community safety excellence, operational excellence, and value for money. So the first area that we look at is the people excellence. So during this year, we've done another employee engagement survey in October 2024 and had the results from that, which again showed some marked improvement in our engagement, but it helps us to focus our culture work by identifying where we might have some gaps, and that's what the work will progress with moving forward. Now we've got that baseline for us. So again, a good positive step for us. We've also introduced a suite of leadership development programs. They're aligned to the National Fire Chiefs Council products, but we've kind of developed those and delivered those in-house, we've also put in place some focused development pathways to help support individuals within our service to develop into future leadership roles, and also to give them a flavour of the types of things that they might be doing, which helps them test out as well whether it's the right thing for them to, as well as us allowing to see them in those development roles. In terms of recruitment and progression, we've done a lot of recruitment activity recently, but we've been working on the transparency of those activities, ensuring that we have independent persons on the panels with us, providing some scrutiny of how we run our panels. And we'll also be running next year, or this year, should I say, the Athena Communications focus event, where we're looking at how do we improve our diversity of our applicants. So what are the current perceived barriers is another highlight of activity that we'll be focusing on. We've also completed 100% DBS, or 99.8%, I think, of DBS checks. We've just got 2 outstanding. But again, another significant achievement from our people team in progressing that across our organisation. 2 major projects have delivered in the people area as well. That's been the trauma welfare support process. So that's helping to deal with traumatic incidents and how we diffuse and support our members of staff when they've been to something that's perhaps a bit challenging, to hopefully prevent further issues in the future. And we've also put in place our new occupational health system as well. So 2 kind of good moves forward. We have just held our first Men's Health Day, which was a great success, which has been largely talked about across the service. And that builds upon previously last year, our menopause awareness events and our women's development days as well. So in people excellence, there's an awful lot of activity that's been going on there. Community safety excellence, and we have a multi-award winning collaboration that we've been focused on, which is our community wellbeing officers. So that's a collaboration with eEast, looking at how we put some resources into the community to work on those slips and falls within the house, but also to provide safe and well information as well. We've been running a trial of extending our successful fire break program, so that's intervention for young people. And we are refocusing our crews on doing community engagement activities, which started in April 2025. Some other highlights, or maybe a little bit of a low light, actually, sorry, first. In terms of our water safety partnership, and with the loss of some of the funding we've had from PCC, we've lost the road safety officer role, and we're currently be exploring about how we can fulfill that gap in a different mechanism moving forward. I'll move on to operational, 7.7, talking about understanding growth. We've talked about that a bit this morning, and that's been a new addition for this year into our CRMP, is looking at putting some focus activity into understanding the growth, how we can seek additional funding, and then how we deploy that across our service to meet that growth requirement, linked in very closely to the Vision 2030 project. Operational excellence then, we've talked already about the on-call trials that we've done. And the Vision 2030 is the focus, again, with the technological development that we're doing alongside that. 8.5, we just talk about another highlight, which is our training records and competency system. So we've had a major project on that, looking at a bit of a complete overhaul about how we record training and competencies, making it much clearer, making it more accessible, and actually streamlining. So we've delivered a significant productivity and efficiency saving through that as well, in terms of just streamlining a lot of that saving, which we allowed to our operational crews to focus on other activities. Value for money, in terms of that area, some of the highlights: we've delivered our new mobilising system into the combined fire control, which is a complete sort of 999 call handling, logging, identification of resource, dispatch and communication with crews. So that was a success for last year, and this year we're focusing on further embedding that system, looking at future capabilities that we can enhance within that, dealing with any technological issues that remain, so kind of the what do you call it, any fault finding and fixing there. And we'll also, sadly, yesterday was the uncoupling of the collaboration with Suffolk Fire and Rescue Service, so that's been another focus and how we now move forward, which you've got a paper later on that will talk a bit more detail about that. We do a lot of collaboration by nature as well in terms of our organisation, and we have further collaborations that we'll be investigating this year moving forward too. In terms of our technical infrastructure, there's a lot of work that goes on that, not just in the infrastructure, but in terms of process improvement, etc. We have released over the last year, we've done the new mobile data terminals, so they're terminals that sit within the appliances that allow crews to get messaging from control, but also to access risk information whilst they're out and about. So those have been replaced. And we're also keeping up with the replacement of the SIP, or session initiated protocol, so making sure our 999 lines are sustainable in the future. And a huge focus for us is cybersecurity as well. It's one of the highest risks on our strategic risk register, and so it's something we continue to invest in and move that forward, having recently recruited a cybersecurity expert that we share with Bedfordshire as well. Sustainability is also one of our priorities. So we've seen the introduction of hydro-treated vegetable oil, or HVO as it's much easier to say, and using that instead of diesel in some of our fire appliances. And in terms of our building, we've done air source heat pumps, and we continue to implement building management systems to make sure that they're running effectively and efficiently. We have had the new Procurement Act that's come in this year, and so a lot of focus and activity has been around preparing us for that and how it impacts us and making sure that we're ready to implement that across the service. And a paper I'll come on to a little bit more detail later on about scenario planning for financial business continuity. So how we do that throughout the year, we continue to do that moving forward. I'm not going to take you in detail through the performance measures because there's quite a lot of information in there and I could take quite a while of that, but I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much indeed, Tamsin. Members, do you have any questions for Tamsin, first of all? Councillor Bywater.
Thank you very much, Chair, and congratulations to both of you on your appointments. I look forward to being able to work with you. Great report as always, Tamsin. I just want to touch on the appendix about battery fires, particularly on page 31. And it talks about the recording of lithium-related fires are in the free text of when we record them. I'm just wondering how we can improve that and so we get a bit more accurate data on that, please.
Yeah, so that's a bit of a crossover from the old mobilising system into the new mobilising system. So because the old mobilising system was very, very old, I'd say in the kind of at least 10 years old in terms of that system, if not 20, we weren't able to kind of put the new categorisation of fires. So the control crews were having to manually write that in. So when we were looking backwards, we do have to do some trawls for those kind of keywords to help us to identify that. Moving forward in the new system, we can identify that much more clearly. So moving forward, it'll be much clearer. But because we're partway through a call year when we transitioned, it means we've got half data in that way and half data moving forward. So yeah, it'll get better moving forward. And I think as well, the IRS system, so the government reporting system requires us to update that moving forward as well.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for Tamsin? Yes, Councillor Navarro.
Just a quick question on the fire and safety visits that have increased, but the uptake has dropped. So the question is, what are the barriers to uptake in home fire safety visits, and how can members support increasing that engagement in our divisions?
So I guess we have increased them, and that's by kind of releasing the capacity and having more community safety officers. What we try to do is we share data so that we can also get people's telephone numbers so we can schedule. But I think sometimes it's where we might have to do cold calling on those specific addresses where we will struggle sometimes to gain entry. Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so we're targeting our most vulnerable in our community. So I think if we're true to ourselves, the likelihood of getting across the threshold of those properties is really challenging because we are targeting those people that probably don't want us in their property. There'll be reasons why, and working with multi-agency partners, that might get us across the threshold. So the likelihood is by seeing a reduction in us delivering the home fire safety visit, we're probably seeing an increase in our multi-agency safeguarding hub referrals, in that we're not getting across. So we need other partners to help us get across that threshold. So that's probably why there's a slight shift in us trying to increase the number of home fire safety visits and getting across the threshold of the doorstep to make the engagement happen.
Councillor Malinowski.
Thank you for the report, and congratulations both of you on your appointments. I wanted to ask a bit about 7.3 about the education and community outreach regarding emerging technologies and lithium-ion batteries. I'm obviously coming from a part of the county where we've got a lot of battery storage concerns that are being raised locally, and I'm curious as to what the point in the report mentions that there will be some education and outreach provided throughout the year as things develop. I was just wondering if you could expand a little bit on what that looks like and where people with concerns can get information.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor. So for a number of years now, we probably haven't been visiting educational settings. We've had online options. There's an online community safety outlet called Staywise, which we utilise. National Fire Chief Council driven initiative, which is superb. That said, we think that we need to get back into schools and target certain age groups depending on their age, will depend on what advice we're giving. So, for example, leading up to summer, we'll get in there and deliver some water safety advice to maybe the sort of year 5s, year 6s, certainly into secondary schools. Younger children as they're starting to walk to school on their own, road safety advice. But as part of that package will be home fire safety advice, and that's where the EV lithium ion education will come in around. At what point do we expect them to have their first devices with batteries in, charge safe, basically a bit of a charge safe campaign around how it and when they should be charging those devices, what they should look out for to sort of set them up for the future. So it's all part of the bigger package for education. Touching on your point more broadly around EV, that kind of sits separately to our community safety kind of educational piece. That's more about our operational risk and response to those larger scale sites. So our the large solar farms and then the battery energy storage systems associated with that. We're seeing those in properties now as well, domestic properties. So hopefully our work nationally will be to drive some sort of whether it's legislation or guidance that gives us the ability as a fire and rescue service to know where they are, to allow us to respond safely, and where not, we'll educate our colleagues in making sure when they turn up at those incidents, they're able to respond safely to what's in front of them. Because at the minute there isn't anything necessarily from our perspective, from a legal perspective, that we're able to do from a fire safety regulatory reform order. That's very much about non-domestic properties, not about the broader EV world and solar farms, etc.
Any other questions or comments from members? Councillor Dieter.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, thank you, Chair. So the question that I had was for appendix number 6, sustainability measures. There's a graph that shows single-use plastic bottles being purchased, reducing over time. But I was just wondering, where is this? Is this within where is this data, basically? Like, what is it encapsulating? Thank you.
No, you're fine. So this would be about water bottles and plastic bottles. So, for example, we used to purchase a lot of single-use plastic water bottles that would go on the appliance for when they were out and about, especially in hot weather. And so there's been a significant drive to purchase reusable bottles, thermos, kind of chilled water, and also looking at refills, so soap refills and stuff like that. So it's been a kind of drive that started from that, and what we're really pleased with is we're seeing that a significant decrease, which is contributing towards our sustainability strategy.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? I will turn my head fully to both sides this time. Please.
Thanks, Chair. Just coming back on the point around battery energy storage sites. I think just to give you the reassurance that at a national level, it is clearly being taken very seriously. I think one of the challenges for fire and rescue services is that the technology is moving at such a pace. The research is behind that curve. But I give you the reassurance that from a National Fire Chiefs Council perspective, absolutely it's been taken really seriously. They're looking at the research, they're looking at government in terms of funding, so we can fund some research as to how we may in future be able to deal with some of these more complicated incidents and sites that are obviously popping up all over the place. So just the reassurance that it is being taken seriously.
Thank you very much, Matthew. We are being asked to note the contents of this report, and in particular the CRMP performance measures update in Appendix 1. Can I ask any member who does not agree with this proposal to please raise their hand now? On that basis, then, that is noted, and we move on to agenda item number 9, which is the combined fire control update. Can I ask Wayne Swales, Assistant Director, Service Operational Support and Combined Fire Control, to introduce this report, please?
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, members, and good afternoon, new members as well. Thank you for your time, and I do hope you've had an opportunity to read through the report. There is a reasonable amount of detail in there, so what I will do is I'll take us through a really brief overview of our history and background as combined fire control, and as to where we sit currently today with some significant changes from yesterday, I would suggest. So some background: since 2011, both Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Service and Suffolk have been in a highly efficient, effective combined fire control, where Cambridgeshire have operated and received and mobilised fire appliances for both counties. Throughout that time, we've provided a significantly effective, efficient, cost-effective service for both organisations. During which time, we have operated up until 2024, last September, on a system previously provided by Remstack and Frequentis, which was approaching nearly 40 years we were with that system. So clearly, during that time, technology has progressed. Our needs have progressed as well. So within that, both organisations jointly agreed to collaborate and work towards a new technical solution. Back in 2019, Sistel Solutions was awarded the contract to provide that solution to mobilise our fire appliances and receive our calls. Throughout that, the key milestone in 5.3 that I think is really important to recognise is in June 23, Suffolk Fire and Rescue Service announced their intention to separate from that successful collaboration. That was a significant milestone both organisationally and for our work that was being undertaken on that new system. Significant financial impacts to Suffolk residents, obviously, at the fact that they decided to go for a standalone system. So they decided to move to their own mobilising system with their own fire control. So ceasing the collaboration with ourselves. There were challenges throughout. Many of the teams that have been working within Suffolk left the organisation, which again presented a huge challenge to us as an organisation to be able to push forward with that project. There were significant risks and concerns that throughout we raised with those organisations, but continued to push ahead and work towards what's going to be the best mobilising system provided for the communities of Cambridgeshire. We encountered delays throughout that. The planned original go live date of June last year was delayed due to 3 months due to Suffolk not being ready to go live, and some of the progress we had there. But what we did is we initiated some business continuity plans with Suffolk to make sure that everything should be in place should those activities not be completed. Moving through there, we had an action plan we put in place to make sure that those issues were mitigated so that we could continue and get our mobilising system where we needed to be within the time frame to provide the best system. So in 2024, we went live with a new mobilising system in combined fire control. So we're 9 months into that now, and that was a culmination of a huge project, replacing an entire system that allows us to communicate to our crews, receive 999 calls, log incidents, and dispatch and identify the right resources to the right people, right communities, both in Cambridgeshire and Suffolk. Throughout that time, we've been working with our provider, which is Sistel, and Suffolk to integrate provided with Suffolk and Sistel to integrate that system in the time. And again, like I say, in September 24, we went live. Significant amounts of work working with Sistel to get that where we needed to be. So 9 months we've been running that system, and sadly yesterday Suffolk moved across to their own system. So 12 o'clock yesterday, our collaboration operating their fire calls ceased with Suffolk, which I can't I can't describe how much of a change in work practices that is for our fire control. I was just up there prior to coming to here, and it's very, very different for most of our colleagues up in that function to get used to working in. There aren't many that have worked there prior to Suffolk being with us, so it's a massive change, and I don't think we can underestimate that. So what we've done, alongside knowing obviously we have a known budget pressure with that as well, there is a need to review and look at how we operate the fire control, which is going to be for Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Service. We have a modern system in Sistel, which brings multiple opportunities and multiple efficiencies, but we need to do that alongside our colleagues in fire control, and we need to understand how we're going to deliver that in the most efficient way, in the best way for our service and for our communities in Cambridgeshire. So what we've done is we've looked at how we're going to deliver that. So we've got two key streams. One, which is our Control Works project, and Tamsin alluded to it earlier on in the CRMP, which is, as with any new system, as with any modern technology, there's always updates. I think as we all sit here looking at our phones, and no doubt there'll be another update on our mobile phones. And it's the same with any technology. So within that, we have to plan and look at what our next update is. This is moving across to a new version of the system called Aegis, which is a mandatory upgrade we have to do, which has multiple software integration changes, and it will improve the system. We have some other options in there, which is an application which is used by officers as a viewing platform for them to be able to see the incidents that are ongoing, and us as operational commanders to be able to use remote from the incident as well to see as an officer what's going on at the time, and any information that we need to use that. But it has other options. It has other opportunities that we can use it for. So we're exploring that alongside our providers. We have another part of work to do with them, which is our current provider of telephony within the solution has given Sistel notice that they'll no longer be providing the service. So we are then having to, alongside Sistel, look at another way of providing that with other providers, which is ongoing at the moment. And coincidentally, the last section there is old news, I guess. Now I've just said to you that Suffolk have now gone live yesterday with its own mobilising system. So we have worked throughout that time to ensure that there was no impact on those residents in Cambridgeshire and on the impact on the residents in Suffolk from our control. And I'm pleased to say that whilst yesterday was a challenging day for different reasons, we moved across with no impact to Suffolk or Cambridgeshire, any of the fire calls that we were receiving. Moving on to that, and again, I touched earlier on, key to this is around our colleagues in fire control and our colleagues across the service, is how we look at shaping that function in the best way. So we are going to look at root and branch of how we operate that department and that function, and we're going to look at ways that we can improve and modernise how we deliver it. And really important is about how we continue to align that function with the wider service. So there's significant ways, and our aim there is to continually improve and drive our positive cultural change that we've got underway. And again, the really important part to this is any change will only be a success if we do it with our people. So it's really important that we engage with them, communicate them, and make sure they're involved in activities. Again, I literally was just there before I came here talking through where we are, because again, it's been a significant amount of change over the last 5 years, not only with Suffolk leaving, but also the changes with the system. So any other changes we have to manage very carefully and make sure we're doing it in the right way. So like I say, I've just been up there talking to them because there's always lots of what's next. Well, actually what's next is us to have a period of understanding what the now looks like, which is really important, given we're only just over 24 hours on from that. Thank you. If there's any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Wayne. Members, do we have any questions for Wayne? Councillor Boyce, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Having been here last year, I know the pain that Suffolk caused you. If it was supposed to go live last year, have you an estimate on how much that's cost Cambridgeshire's fire service to, for want of a word, hold their hand? And are we able to claim any of that money back?
Yeah, so throughout, we have been continuing any work that we have undertaken, which has caused an impact to our budget. We've been cross-charging, and throughout, there's been multiple different parts to that. Again, as of today, what we are now at the point of is that uncoupling charge, if I put it that way, which is to look at, because again, there has been significant work that's gone into ensuring everything we do has been joint service, but actually now there are impacts on us. I can't give you a figure as it sits here at the moment because there's some of those costs that we're still working through. But the uncoupling costs absolutely will be incurred for that, because again, that sits as a cost to Suffolk, not to us.
Yes, Councillor Bywater.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just a quick question, really, just as a follow-up to that, really. I think it would be good to understand those numbers, especially when we're potentially considering partnership working in the future with other people. So, lessons learned, I'm thinking, really. But my final is just a point, really. I think some of us have been on this journey for a considerable amount of time and witnessed the difficulties that this has caused us as an organisation. And I just want to put it on record, really, that to show our appreciation as a fire authority to our staff, because ultimately they're the ones who have got us through this. So Wayne, yourself, and all the way down to the people who are manning the phones, basically. So I think it's important that we recognise that and show our thanks. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bywater, and I'd certainly like to associate myself with those comments very early in my tenure. So thank all of you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Navarro.
Thank you. Yes, I think I sense how challenging this has been in your voice even. So how are the staff being supported through this period of uncertainty, and what is the impact in morale and retention, if you can let us know?
Yeah, thanks. So absolutely, I don't, like I say, we can't underestimate the changes that they've been through within there. And what that does make difficult is any small change now becomes what is perceived as a big change because of the multiple impacts of delays. And as we all know, any kind of delay for anything we do creates anxiety. We have throughout made sure that we've had a visible presence in there. And one of the most difficult parts is trying to keep communication at the right pace and the right level, because at times throughout this journey, it has been changeable. And I can only take up to the last week as a prime example. Suffolk were due to go live last Wednesday, and that delay meant it was pushed again to Tuesday just gone. And yesterday morning, it was due to go live at 10 o'clock. And they went live at 12 o'clock with a delay. So throughout that, it's about keeping as much information as we can with our colleagues up there without giving undue change to that as well. So if I'm honest, it's a real challenge. And I think as we move through, the key to this is culturally making sure that there is an alignment with the rest of our organisation. And with that, at points, there are always challenging, difficult conversations that we need to have and difficult information we have to share. But as long as we share it with open and transparency, which is we've done throughout, and again, I can only pick up from my slight period in there since last September, it's been a very bumpy ride. And at times it's been honest in saying, look, this is very bumpy. And I can't do anything other than to say, look, we're going to make this as smooth and as challenge-free as I can, but it is bumpy. And I think it's just being honest and open. We have other multiple ways we put in. So we're putting support in there through where people need through occupational health from specific cases. But it's continually being visible and just listening, I think.
Any further questions or comments? Yes, please, Councillor.
Hi there. Thanks, Wayne. One Wayne to another. This journey's just been disastrous, really, from the outset when this was raised. What I was hoping now, are there any positives to this in terms of the decoupling? We know all the negatives, I'm sure it's both sides, but I just want to know, because having done some decoupling from the county council in Peterborough, for example, it is painful, but there are some upsides in the end. It allows you to focus more on your own service. I was just wondering if you've found that yet, or there's any kind of thing on the horizon.
Yeah, so I think absolutely. I think it's very easy for me to say that we draw a line now and we look at our organisation, what's best for our people within that. And I think what it does is it is within this, and again, I could sit here all afternoon and talk to you about some of the things that I want us to try and achieve within that piece of work. But for me, it's about giving those people who work up in our fire control opportunity to get out into the wider service, to get out and develop their skills and exposure and the ability to be able to have some time. That previous 5 years have been, I use bumpy as a word because I don't know, it probably doesn't describe it as best. But that's also had some restrictions on our ability because we've had so much time working through bringing a system in, working with the decoupling as well, that has reduced the opportunity for our people to be able to do other things that they want to do for their own development, as well as us to enhance and support our teams. So that gives us an opportunity now. That gives us a real opportunity to invest in our people, invest in our culture in there. And whilst we know there is going to be opportunities to grow and make efficiencies on what we do from how we do things, you're absolutely right. It's looking at the positives now without looking back. I hate to use the word we are where we are, but we are where we are. But it is, what does that look forward through? Hence the reason. One part of that is very technological, which is very detailed and things that we have to do. And one part is about our people and what we do. And that's the bit for the focus.
Matthew, would you like to add something to that?
Just a couple of points. I think we shouldn't underplay the impact. Thank you, Councillor Navarro. Shouldn't underplay the impact it's had on our control function. All of this over a period of at least 5 years, and I agree with Wayne. There has been significant uncertainty through no fault of their own, and they have actually stuck with it all the way through. So we have to give them credit and thank them for that. That said, we do recognise there's still some way to go in terms of the technology, particularly making sure that is as robust as it can be. And we're working hard with our partner and obviously putting additional support in for the control room, not just around their welfare, but also around technological support as well. So we take it seriously. So we are listening. Sometimes these things take time to obviously implement. In terms of positives, absolutely, we're going to have to concentrate on ourselves now. I think that's the key. So before we were always subject to agreement with Suffolk, no more. Well, that's got to be a positive. I would suggest, certainly in the short term, whilst we continue to develop the system further and make it as robust as possible. And then who knows what the future holds beyond that. But I suppose, again, my thanks to the control room and everybody that was involved in the project, because it wasn't without its challenges. And hopefully, with Suffolk now leaving, we can draw a line under it. Hopefully I won't have to rattle on about Suffolk anymore in these meetings, and we can start to look forward and talk about Cambridgeshire and making it better for Cambridgeshire.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Any other comments or questions? On that basis, then, we are being asked as members to note the significant progress which has been made to date and the current position of the CFC function, and in particular to note the next steps for CFC as outlined in paragraph 6 of the paper. Can I ask that any member who does not agree with this proposal, please raise their hand now. On that basis, this is duly noted, and we move on to agenda item number 10, which is the Vision 30 progress update. And can I ask Stuart Smith, Assistant Chief Fire Officer, to introduce this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. I will take you through the paper as quickly as possible, because I know we spent a long time covering Vision 30 this morning, and I appreciate your engagement on the start of what hopefully is a great journey for us as an organisation to move to managing the risk and demand of our growing county. So as we said back in November 2024, the authority and today were briefed on the opportunities and risks that the organisation face around the growing risks across our county and growth in particular. We scoped Vision 30 and it came to life and has been running since that date. And I will now take you through a couple of areas that we've been focusing on since the start of the project. So primarily looking at the shift systems and how effective and efficient they are, making sure that we are adhering to our policies and procedures, And Simon touched on ridership, so making sure we have the right number of firefighters on our fire appliances when they are mobilised to incidents, and therefore making sure we have the right availability and the right number of appliances available on any given time. We've increased skill sets, so specialisms at our on-call stations, enhancing their ability to respond to some of our more specialist incidents, such as water incidents, animal rescues. And because we're primarily a rural organisation, and off the back of the 2022, and we saw large number of wildfires, if you will, across our county, we've got dedicated rural firefighting appliances that carry certain equipment to help us deal with those incidents. So they've been trained up in that arena as well. Not just there, but our officer cadre, so station commanders, group commanders, carry what are called additional skill sets to help us to become tactical advisors, basically, and advise our incident commanders at certain incidents. And we've enhanced our skill sets around wildfire TACADs off the back of 2022, but also waste fire TACADs. So we're seeing that increase, and we touched on batteries and disposal of batteries, which is always causes an issue in that world as well. So we have got those trained, and they also sit on a national register, which allows them to be used over the border and support. And more recently, our support to Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue Service at a waste fire they had in Rushden was an example of where that was put to good use. We have started consultation around mixed crewing. So just to broaden that, you've got whole-time firefighters in Cambridge, and you've got on-call firefighters in Cambridgeshire. The whole-time firefighters can ride on on-call fire appliances, and we have our day crewing, so Wisbech, St Neots and Ely. We've got on-call and whole-time firefighters that ride on the same fire engine. We don't have on-call firefighters that can ride on our whole-time shift system, so what we call our Cambridgeshire shift system, which is our whole-time 2 days, 2 nights, 4 rest days. Slight deviation in there in that we've got roaming pumps, but we'll clarify what that means at future meetings. So in short, we basically want on-call to be able to ride on those whole-time appliances, provide resilience into that shift system. So that's something that we will consult on with our representative bodies. Ultimately, the aim is to get a more flexible and resilient crewing models across the service, whether that's the ones we've got now, or whether that's we need to look at something different in the future. We will work through that. Ultimately, using that bespoke modelling tool that was discussed earlier, that our digital transformation team are busy building for us, which should be really helpful in our quest to finding some answers to these questions. We touched on growth, the growth post, so our growth and planning officer role. If we get that up and running, that will also be linked into the Vision 30 piece in terms of where we see growth in the county, where we can draw down funding from those developments, and also the impact on us broader than just Cambridgeshire. Matthew earlier touched on Universal Studios. We're already in contact with colleagues in Bedfordshire. We've been to visit East West Rail and those consultations and the impact that will have, and the greater plans for Greater Cambridge, Peterborough, etc. We are embedded within. So that's the work to date and on ongoing work. But if I can just take you through the planned works, which is kind of we were looking for your support over the coming months. We will continue to consult with representative bodies, update policies and procedures where required, but primarily focusing around that mixed crewing agreement, which will provide extra resilience. The internal modelling tool, we should have a baseline understanding, as we say, in July as to what that looks like. And then we'll continue to evolve that to a point where early next year it's in a real position for us to utilise and drive out some good quality data for Simon and the team to work through before we bring that back to yourselves. We will review our operational rotas. So away from our frontline crews, whole time and on-call crews, we will review our operational command structure. So from principal officers like ourselves through to the station commanders, we'll take a route to branch review of those rota patterns and the resilience that they need and offer. They are linked pretty much directly to the work that the modelling tool will produce in terms of our planning assumptions. So there is planning assumptions for the number of fire engines we will need. That will be linked to the number of officers that are required to attend those incidents, depending on the size and scale of incidents. We hope to continue to secure further funding, which we will work hard to do, whether that's through SEAL 106, etc., but also through the additional funding that we receive through the sort of annual budget, if you will. And this year we've been able to put 8 additional posts into the whole time side of the organisation. If that funding continues over the coming years, we will look to reinvest that back into the organisation. As Matt said, it's the three-legged stool analogy. Yes, frontline's really important, and we will look at how many posts we need to create the best shift system and response in terms of being resilient and flexible. But we will need the support colleagues to enable that to happen. Certainly, if you take a crewing model that is more flexible and requires resource from different areas, our resource management unit might need to grow, for example, to enable us to manage those additional resources that we're working with. And then finally, as we touched on earlier, it is hoped that at our meeting November-December 25, we'll be able to come to you with what we think our planning assumptions looks like for Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Service moving forward. And then once we know that, we'll be able to factor that in when we look at the more drilled down modelling early in the new year, and then we'll bring that to members in due course. So the next time we see a paper around this will be in December, which should have our new planning assumptions. So we spoke about 14 appliances earlier today. We'll confirm whether it's still that or whether that's needs to increase, depending on the data that we gather. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stuart, and thank you also, particularly on behalf of new members, for your time in the briefing session earlier today. That was very clear and much appreciated. Members, do you have any questions for Stuart? Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the report, Stuart. Going forward with the Vision 30, are we taking into account, as we mentioned earlier, like things that are going on in Bedfordshire, like Universal Studios, Tempsford, then we've got East Park Solar all along the Bedfordshire-Cambridgeshire border. We've got the possible anaerobic digester large in Northamptonshire, along with increased warehousing in Northamptonshire. So when we're looking at our capabilities, I hope we are taking into account whether Northants, Bedfords, and all the other ones, Suffolk, can actually then provide a service if we can't manage going forward. So I would just like to be, have confidence going forward that we are going to take into account all these possible developments where it could have considerable impact on our abilities to meet fire going forward. And of course, we're now looking at big developments outside Huntingdon like Brampton Cross. So, we do need to keep a very watchful eye on all these developments on our borders.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Gardner. You made some really valid points around where that growth, we'd like to see that growth. Ultimately, we'd like to see it on the borders of our county. So absolutely provide some reassurance that we're engaged with all of our neighbouring fire and rescue services about what their plans are, because they're in a similar boat to ourselves in terms of what are they going to do with their county in terms of response strategy, etc. So we're tied into what their plans are. We're tied into that growth on our borders. You mentioned Universal, Tempsford is a big one, East West Rail. But then as we move further around, Wisbech and that link with Norfolk, a real strategic station for us, relationship with Suffolk. So yeah, we are well embedded in there alongside with our local authorities on what they're looking to do within the county as well.
Thank you, Stuart. Any further questions? Councillor Rees.
Hi, thanks very much. I'm wondering about this new modelling tool. It sounds really exciting, and we can expect data in November. Could you just talk through the data that is being used to create these models? And I'm especially interested in how climate data, climate factors are being factored in. Mentioned earlier about the heat and flooding, this exponential, I think was the word used, increase in those risks. So how is that being taken into account in the models? And just, if I may, a second follow-up question is just, how is those climate caused risk increases being communicated to the public and education? Is that being front and center of that message? Thanks.
Thank you. So in terms of what data, so I think it's a 10-year data set that will look at everything that we've got within Cambridgeshire Fire Risk Service. So whether that's our response, our demand at that particular time, what the risk was like in the county, what the risk is going to look like in the county. My understanding is it's clever enough to be able to, if a new development comes on, so back to Councillor Gardner's point, if we found out that a new development was going to happen just outside Sawtry, for example, we will be able to go into that system and plug in an extra 2,000 homes and rerun the model, and it will tell us what that looks like. So in terms of modelling where resource needs to be, that will be the same for climate change. It will be a gradual capability, so it's not something that will necessarily be ready for January, because we'll need to gather that data from different areas. We won't hold that necessarily in terms of where we think that will be an external data set that we'll need to probably bring in and factor in. So we can use our incident data that we've got. So we know we had a lot of wildfires in 2022, but we'll probably need to get some additional data that we can then drive into that system. So it'll be an additional capability that it will bring in the future. In terms of to your second point around climate change, I think it is front and center for us in terms of we know that is a growing risk, which is why we want to put it into our modelling. We think it's really important, and we know the likelihood is that drives potentially what we call spate conditions, so a large number of calls, volume of calls over a prolonged period of time, and that's going to put stress and strain on our organisation, and we need to understand how we deal with that over a prolonged period of time. Thank you.
You may indeed.
Just to double check. So the climate data, that would be an external data set, and that's something for the future. So when might this model be incorporating that data? From yours, I'm taking it that the November data is not going to have any climate data in it, and when might we expect that external data set to be incorporated into the modelling?
I'll need to get back to you. I need to ask Simon and just clarify, because he will know the exact date of when that's going to be coming. But if I can just go back to the note, just for clarity on the November. November is about the historic data and our planning assumptions, so number of fire engines that we'll need to manage the risk that we can see. The more integrated data will start to come from early in 2026. But Simon might be able to answer.
Yeah, thank you very much, members. So yes, from a it's an iterative system. So we're going to launch it so we can get the baseline modelling data based upon demand and looking at some risk around our built environment. The climate data is requested. It's within the work schedule itself. We're hoping sometime within 2026 is where we're aiming for, because we want to get this system through. We currently already have some planning data around climate. So you'll see in our CRMP, it states in there around the climate. We've got some information straight away from Met Office that are starting to extrapolate that data moving forward around the levels of risk that we're due to see from an impact on summer spate, and also the increased risk in flooding. So some of those planning assumptions now, from a sort of fire and rescue services point of view, we can understand, looking at, as an example, the highest demand days in us as an organisation have all been the 10 highest demand days in the last in history for us have come in the last 5 years due to climate change. So we can quite easily start looking from the point of view of, although we'll have some baseline planning around this business as usual response, we absolutely understand that at points of peak we need to be able to dial that notch up a little bit. The planning system, so we're hoping within 2026 we'll be able to incorporate climate data as well, which is a much more complex data set to be able to try and embed into the system.
Thank you for that. I think the incorporation of that data set would be very welcome. I think as Councillor Rees was noting, this is a risk that exists now, not really one for the future, or not only one for the future. Do we have any other questions for Stuart or any broader comments from members? Okay, on that basis then, we are being asked to note the contents of this report. And in particular, agree the plan and timeframes for future works and associated reporting to the authority as outlined and gone through line by line in paragraph 7. Once again, can I ask any member who does not agree with this proposal to please raise their hand? On that basis, then, this is carried and duly agreed. And we will move on to agenda item number 11, which is the Fire Authority Productivity and Efficiency Return and Financial Business Continuity Planning Update. And can I ask Tamsin Murphy again to introduce this report, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. So, yeah, I'd like to do two things, please. The Productivity and Efficiency Return is something that's requested from Home Office. It started in 2021 as part of the spending review, where government asked us to evidence we were making productivity improvements of 3% for our whole-time firefighters only, and to create a 2% non-pay related efficiency savings. So the productivity and efficiency return is our way of demonstrating our achievement against that. So it started in 2021. It has now continued and become an annual request, and we anticipate that we will have to return another one next year. That's attached to Appendix A or 1 for you to your review. It's quite detailed and it talks about everything we're doing across the service every year. So it's quite a intense data gathering exercise to evidence the efficiency. And what a lot of happens with us is that we make the efficiencies to enable us to reinvest somewhere else. So it's that constant cycle which we've been on for some considerable time. So I think it's fair to say, as with our financial business continuity, that any low-hanging fruit was well and truly taken a long time ago. So those efficiencies are quite challenging to find now. We are one of the lowest funded services in the sector. You've heard that before today. And we are very good at kind of achieving those efficiencies because it's something we've had to challenge ourselves on consistently to be able to reinvest. In terms of the financial business continuity that we put in place, last year we were rated in the 23-25 inspection process from Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabularies and Fire and Rescue Services. That's quite a mouthful, so HMICFRS for short. We were graded outstanding and highlighted for our innovative practice in terms of making our best use of resources. That covered how we were planning through, it references the Integrated Risk Management Plan. That's now referred to as the Community Risk Management Plan, for the CRMP we were talking about earlier. So how we aligned our strategies to that, how we're making best use of those resources, how we were evidencing that, and also our financial business continuity planning. So we do have some risks that reoccur in terms of, we've talked earlier today about the uncertainty about the pay and some of the funding that we don't necessarily receive confirmation of until after budget setting. I hate to mention it yet again, but the impact of Suffolk Fire and Rescue Service leaving the combined fire control leaves us with an estimated or a circa £1.2 million funding gap. We had increased the precepts this year by £4.95, which had supported us in managing these areas of increasing costs. We've also been successful. So we've had some funding confirmed that we weren't expecting, but we've also recently been successful in a SIL grant of £700,000, which enabled us to invest in the St Neots station and do the redevelopment work there. So we're going to continue to invest in the consultancy to help us to seek those grant fundings, either Section 31 or SIL grants moving forward. In terms of financial business continuity for this year, the funding that we've received has enabled us to not need to go to the same level of depth that we would normally do, because that would be the first place that we would go to if we had some challenges in terms of those investment areas that we've highlighted. That would just cease. For 2026-27, though, the proposal is that we will be doing a deep dive financial business continuity plan again, which is where we do, at budget setting time, We will engage with all budget holders to look at how we can reduce their budgets should we need to at some point, and the idea being that should something arise later in the year with those either pay uncertainties or that the funding's not confirmed as we would expect, that we have plans in place ready to enact, and that we're not kind of trying to respond at the moment. So the proposal is that we would do that deep dive again in October 2025 and bring that back to the Fire Authority, where we can outline just how much we feel that we've got sat in that continuity pot if we should have any risks realised. I'm not going to take you through the rather detailed productive and efficiency return unless you've got any questions for me on it. I'm happy to cover those.
Thank you very much, Tamsin. We will then move to questions. Any questions for Tamsin from members? Matthew, please.
I've just got one comment, and there's a certain sense of irony that the efficiency return is taking us a significant amount of effort and time. And I know, sorry, Tamsin, but it does on an annual basis, and it does cause us a certain amount of frustration. But those frustrations have been aired, so just a point, really.
Noted. Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Well, here we are being asked to note the productivity and efficiency report attached to Appendix 1 in the agenda pack, to note the update on financial business continuity planning for 2025-26, and to approve the financial business continuity plans for 2026-27 as summarised in paragraph 7. Once again, can I ask any member who does not agree with this or these proposals jointly to please raise their hand? On that basis, those are duly noted and approved accordingly. And we will move on to agenda item number 12, which is an update on culture-related work at Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Service and the senior leadership team structure. Can I ask Matthew Warren, our Chief Fire Officer and Chief Executive Officer, and Laura Hutchcraft, Head of People, to introduce this report jointly?
So Laura is on leave, so I have been delegated. So some members may have heard in the press through recent times certain amount of negativity around culture in fire and rescue services. There's certainly been coverage nationally, ITV, and there's been a number of independent reports. HMIC, FRS, so Her Majesty's Inspectorate, have concluded in a number of areas that culture in some fire and rescue services needs to be improved. What I would say to that is this service has been on a cultural journey over a number of years. We have taken culture extremely seriously for as long as I can remember, certainly 15 years plus. We have sought to invest in our people. We have sought to bring our people together as a group. And when I say that, I mean we have a professional support function. We have our operational colleagues and we have operational support colleagues. And we have sought for a number of years to ensure there is absolutely mutual respect amongst those groups. And I would suggest that we are a long way down the road compared to other fire and rescue services. There's always challenges, I can say, but hopefully you'll note from earlier the presentation that Tamsin did around our CRMP, that actually is front and centre of that. So a number of the points that I cover in this report have already been covered. You can see we are doing it on an annual basis. It is something that is part of our DNA, and certainly, whilst I am Chief Fire Officer, will remain part of our DNA. Some of the things that we continue to embrace, so professional development pathways, where we have a multitude. We have Simon Newton now, who was an operational fire officer. He is now leading our learning and development team. He's not here today, he's on holiday. But actually, he understands the organisation. He has an attitude to develop and learn and wants to take people with him So that is a real focus for us. We've talked about the integrated workforce. We have employee designed behaviours. They have been updated. So we designed them originally, back in 2000 and something. We've been through a major refresh, but they have been led by our people, not by us. So it's what they would expect to see in terms of behaviours in our organisation, not what we expect to see. They're pretty, as you'd hope, they are aligned. But there's significant effort has gone in. There's other things like, so very, very recently, we have just been awarded the Menopause Supporting Authority, one of only 2 fire rescue services across the country has had that award. So it's recognised that we understand what our female colleagues are going through, and we put appropriate measures in place to ensure that they are in a safe space. We've talked about welfare support. We've talked about Men's Health Day. We've talked about women's development events. All of these things hopefully play into promoting a positive culture within Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Service. And actually, like Tamsin said earlier, our employee engagement score has increased since the last time we did it 2 years ago. And actually, 100% is our obviously goal to keep improving it. So I think hopefully I can give you the reassurance. There are things, and you can see in the report itself, there has been things that have been picked up that we need to improve on. Case management systems, formality around dealing with misconduct, a standards board. Again, we haven't done it the conventional way. Many fire and rescue services have gone out and said, we'll employ an ex-police officer to come and look at our standards. But, well, they're not culturally aligned with us. So we've chosen to do it a different way. So Shaheen, John Anderson and Laura sit on a board effectively and look at standards, behaviours, misconduct, because they understand our organisation and our culture. So we don't necessarily follow the norm, which I think is again a real positive. We always seek to engage. We're not always going to agree. We seek to engage with our representative bodies, but let's be clear, we're never always going to agree. But we have meaningful conversation, and we want to be transparent and upfront around some of the changes and challenges that face us moving forward. So there are things that we're putting in place. We've got a case management system that I've spoken about, and we are making progress in terms of training those that need training, in terms of ACAS training around appeals and such like. But generally speaking, we've had assessments from HMI that have concluded we're good both times with our people, with areas for improvement, but we are good. And absolutely that remains a focus. So I think that hopefully gives you some reassurance that we take the national picture seriously, but locally we have done for a long time, and we will continue to ensure that the organisation moves forward as a positive organisation that people want to come and work at. And then, so if I can move on very briefly to the structure. So I took over, like I said, this time last year-ish, 1st of July, I think. And obviously that led to a whole host of changes, actually. And along the way, we had other people leave or retire. So we've had to effectively come up with a new structure. The structure is included on the appendix, but effectively, so initially I started with John Anderson, so he was appointed DEP, and then we obviously cascade down. Stuart was appointed Assistant Chief Officer a couple of months ago now, and then we've got a series of assistant directors that all have portfolios effectively, and the one outstanding is my Assistant Director for People that is out for advert right now, so hopefully I'll be able to conclude that. But then additional resilience we've added to the team is around the monitoring and the statutory roles. So we never had any deputy roles. So Shaheen was Shaheen, fantastic, but she was on her own. So if she's ever away, we would have been struggling for advice. So Tamsin was appointed by the authority in December to be the deputy monitoring officer, and likewise we appointed Ursula Bird, who we met earlier, as the 151 officer, and we've appointed a deputy 151 should Ursula not be around So again, we've got some resilience should there be should it be needed. Just to highlight Vicky Best, not here today. She was appointed as our Assistant Director for Community Safety, so she's a uniformed officer. And I think that is it, I believe. Okay, so any questions? Happy to take them.
Thank you very much, Matthew. And I must say, on a personal level, I'm really heartened to see the extent to which culture is clearly a real priority for the service, and that you're not resting on your laurels there at all. But we'll open up to questions from members now. Councillor Dieter, first of all.
Thank you, Chair. Matthew, I think that was a really good report, and it is great to see how the culture is being shaped by people. My question is how do you find kind of retaining those people, and if they, if you get more people in, do you update that kind of culture and that report? That's my question. Thank you.
So we have an element of attrition, turnover, on an annual basis, like all organisations do. I suppose in terms of that attraction process, we have very much a values-based interview process that we go through behaviours now. So hopefully we get the people with the right attitudes and behaviours, rather than not necessarily around skills. If that makes some sense to you all. So skills is one thing, but actually for me, attitudes and behaviours is more important, because actually that then strikes at the DNA again of the organisation, if we get that right. We don't always get it right, but that's what we strive to do.
Thank you, Matthew. Councillor Boyce.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Matthew, under the conclusion on 12.1, your latest employer engagement survey recognise the culture you have, with 88% of employees noting a positive culture. 88% of how many actually responded?
I'd have to come back to your numbers. We didn't have, obviously not everybody responded. I can't remember off the top of my head how much it was. I think it was the high 50s, as I recall. I'm thinking 58, around 58%, but I'd have to come back to you. But still statistically, good.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Okay, on that basis then, here we are simply being asked to note the contents of the report. Can I just once again ask any member who does not agree with that proposal just to raise their hand now? That is therefore duly noted, and we will continue with Matthew and item number 13, the draft pay policy statement. I'll ask you, Matthew, to please introduce that report for us.
I'm on a roll now, so bear with me. So this is a statutory return again we have to do every year, where effectively we put a public-facing document out that says actually certain things, pay awards, whether we've entered into any termination agreements with anybody, what our pay gap is, what the pay multiple is, and various other elements around pay. So it's all around transparency. This year, I suppose the key headlines are the ratio pay multiple is 1 to 7 now, which is the lowest I can remember it being. The lowest I can ever remember it being, actually, which is hopefully positive. And yeah, there's not really much more to say on this one, because actually it's largely rolled over from last year. The only other thing to note is the pay award for Grey Book colleagues is 3.2%. It has been agreed. So those are our operational colleagues that will get a 3.2% uplift from the 1st of July this year. We're still waiting on our professional support colleagues. We expect that to be concluded actually in the next week or two. So, and at the moment, that has been offered at the same rate. So
Yeah, nothing more to add.
Well, thank you again, Matthew. Any questions on agenda item 13? Yes, Councillor Rees.
Something in the training earlier, which Simon Thompson mentioned, if I may just raise that and just because it sounded really interesting, that if I understood the retention rates and the overall performance was actually not resulting from pay increase. It was more about community feeling or belonging, or so. Could I just ask for a bit of clarification on that, and how those kinds of considerations play into the pay structure, because it also relates to the cultural change. And yeah, it just sounded like a really interesting feature of this work, which, you know, I'm all admiration. This is really courageous work that's being done here. So if you could just talk me through that a little bit more and tell us how does that factor into the pay structure and those decisions.
If I let Simon answer the first bit, and depending on what his answer is, I will add if I need to, if that's okay, Councillor Rees. But yeah, I'm certainly happy to take you through structures and how they operate. Absolutely.
Okay, so from a point of view, we feel that through national research work, certainly from an on-call point of view, that there's direct links between people feeling placed within their communities and wishing to serve their communities, and trying to utilise that as a much stronger pull to people to become on-call firefighters. There have been a number of national trials and national schemes where we've paid on-call firefighters in different ways through salary schemes. However, the research is pointing us much towards that if we look at the impact on community spirit within the crews and try and look at how we retain crews by recognising and rewarding them through various means, not just monetary reward, that actually firefighters wish to stay longer within the organisation. That said, we absolutely understand we want to recognise people and pay people fairly for what they provide for us, and we've explored a number of different ways locally of trying to do that through contractual changes over the years. Obviously, from our point of view, the pay structures are nationally set. So we talked about earlier on, the National Joint Council have set the pay bandings for us regarding our on-call firefighters, and they also set the pay bandings for our whole-time firefighters as well. What we try and do around that is how we can, and we understand, and I'll use an example if I may, certain on-call stations that have more of a team ethic that come down to the station to have what we'd class as a bit of an old-fashioned fire service team approach. They come down, they generally join each other for fish and chips before drill night. They might have a conversation, they'll sit there and chat, they'll have some social impact. It becomes a very social function. They're the stations that generally perform very well for us and nationally. So that's some of the elements that it can't just be about pay. We understand that's a really important factor for people. We want to pay people fairly for what they do. However, some of the other stuff that we've generally moved away from in the past, we're wanting to try and push back into those organisations to give them community focus and make them a real community hub for local communities.
Anything you'd like to add to that, Matthew?
Yeah, just in terms of context, we obviously operate with our representative bodies, and they have a series of conditions that are around the Grey Book. It's called Grey Book Terms and Conditions. Okay, they date back to 2004 originally. There's been various updates along the way, but we need to ensure that obviously we work within those parameters as well with our rep body. So anything we do design has to have them in mind. Otherwise, we may struggle to get an agreement to implement. We can move outside of those by agreement, but clearly we ideally where we can, we work within those constraints. Okay, so just to put it into context. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments on this agenda item? Well, here we are being asked to approve the draft pay policy statement as outlined in Appendix 1 of this report for publication. Once again, I'll do this by exception. So can I ask any member who does not agree with this proposal to please raise their hand now? On that basis, that is duly approved, and we will move on to Matthew's third of 4 items, agenda item 14, proposed changes to Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Services internal dispute resolution procedure for firefighter pension schemes. Can I ask you, Matthew, to introduce the report and in particular the specific proposed changes?
Thank you again, Chair. So lots of legacy here, members. So pensions have been subject to quite a lot of scrutiny over a number of years. The government announced changes many moons ago that were implemented. They were challenged at the time by the representative bodies under age legislation. It was found in favour of that challenge. So effectively, what happened? It was called Sargent and Matthews, but Sargent was largely around age discrimination. And what happened was a number of people that had been in the pension scheme were being told they weren't going to be in that pension scheme anymore, and they're going to be moved on to a new scheme that would have been obviously detrimental to them. That was reversed, so immediate detriment was effectively was invoked, which I reversed those changes, but they've been a long time coming. And the reason why they've been a long time coming is because it's really complicated. So what happened was some individuals have been transitioned onto the new scheme, then they're going to have to be unravelled and put back into the old scheme, and there's various complications, both with contributions and tax exemptions, and it's really, and I don't want to overplay this, but it's really complicated for even those that think we sort of understand it. So we have been through a process over a number of years where we absolutely will ensure that people are paid their rightful pension. But through a process, and unfortunately the process has been drawn out, one because of regulation, one because of legislation, and also because of technology. The technology is so complicated to try and make sure these are paid accurately, that's been playing catch up as well. So it leads us to people can, quite rightly, raise a complaint. And what we're suggesting on this is those complaints previously have gone to a pensions appeal committee, but because of the complexity around them, and the knowledge required and the legacy knowledge, actually we're saying this now needs to move to me as, if you like, the appeal manager in conjunction with the fire authority. But actually I hear these because we could end up with quite a few of the same type of appeal because of process. But I will report through to you in terms of the outcomes and what we're doing to make sure that we mitigate these in line with the legislation. Fundamentally, I think I just want to give the reassurance that actually we want to resolve these issues quite rightly, and people will be paid absolutely what they're owed, but we want to pay them correctly. What we don't want to do is pay them. The legislation then effectively comes in and we pay them incorrectly, because that will cause all of us a whole lot bigger headache. So hopefully this is more of a common sense approach, whereby we work with our pension provider to ensure that we absolutely achieve the outcomes for the individuals in the timescales. But if they don't, they go through a process, and that in itself is understood properly. So that is really the proposed. So the big change really is for number 4 and 5, effectively, because it comes to me. Okay.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Members, do we have any questions on this? Any comments of any kind? Okay, well, here we are being asked to approve the proposed changes with immediate effect, as detailed in paragraph 5 of the accompanying paper. And then subject to that approval, to authorise the monitoring officer to make the necessary amendments to the constitutional documents, specifically the terms of reference and appointments to committees, outside organisations and other bodies. Once again, we will do this by exception. So can I ask any member who does not agree with those 2 proposals to please raise their hand now? On that basis, those are duly approved and authorised respectively. Before we move on to agenda item number 15, could I politely ask that Stuart Smith leaves the room? Agenda item number 15 is the ratification of Assistant Chief Fire Officer appointment. And Matthew, I think once again, I'd like to ask you to introduce this for us. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, I suppose, put context the process. So through my delegations, I'm able to appoint at the senior level, so there's both at deputy and at assistant chief, and then obviously have to bring it to fire authority for ratification. But sometimes the process is slightly misaligned because we went through a process for Stuart perhaps a couple of months back. Stuart went through an onerous process. There were a number of candidates. We ended up we shortlisted to 2 in the end. We had 4. We shortlisted to 2, I believe, but it was very, very clear. Stuart was absolutely the better candidate on the day, which actually is testament to perhaps the investment we spoke about earlier. You know, we invest in our people. We've invested over a number of years. We've invested in Stuart over a number of years, and actually that came out quite clearly in the evidence that he presented to us on that particular day. He had been temporary for a period of roughly 8 months, and I mean you've all seen him today. Anyway, he brings enthusiasm, absolutely, and a desire to enhance and improve our fire and rescue service. So hopefully you'll be supportive of his appointment. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. I think if I understand this correctly, this is something for which you have delegated authority, and we're being asked here just to ratify that decision. But members, do you have any questions for Matthew? Start with Councillor Jamil.
Congratulations on your appointment, Chair. Firstly, look forward to working with you. It's not a question. It's more of a I couldn't agree more. Having known, the said person, shall we say, for a number of years now, I actually endorse the decision made by Matthew, and I if you needed a second or proposal, whatever, I would fully have no hesitation in.
Fantastic to hear. Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Councillor Bywater.
Yeah, thank you. Just to row in behind Jamil there, really, I think fully support this appointment. I've seen and witnessed Stuart work on many occasions, so very happy to support it. But I just also want to come in back on the back of what Matthew said in relation to our processes that we've got in place here for succession planning and appointing and developing our staff within the authority. I think you've only got to look around the country, and I can think of 2 chief fire officers at different fire services who started here and worked here, who are now leading fire services around the country. So I think we're doing something right, and like I say, very happy to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bywater. I'm obviously personally at the beginning of a steep learning curve here, but it can only be a good thing to see the length of tenure and the opportunities for progression that people have in the service, and I think it reflects very well on all of those in senior leadership roles. Any further comments or questions? Perfect. Well, we are being asked here to note the ACFO assessment process as outlined in the document, and specifically to ratify the appointment of Stuart Smith as the new ACFO as required by the current authority scheme of delegation. Again, we'll do this by exception. If there is anybody here who does not agree with that proposal, please raise your hand now. Accordingly, that is both noted and ratified. And in the hope that he's lurking somewhere outside the door, can we invite Stuart back into the room? Don't know if you want to make a comment when he returns. And I will now hand over to Matthew, who has promised he won't joke.
Yeah, I won't joke. So, well done, Stuart. And I think, just obviously you performed extremely well on that day. And I look forward to working with you and actually delivering some of the ambitions for us as a service. So thank you. Well done.
Thank you very much. So we will move on now to agenda items 16A and 16B, which are to review and approve the minutes of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee's meetings held on the 15th of January and the 26th of March this year. Does anybody have any comments that they want to raise in relation to those minutes? They are therefore duly noted. And we'll move on to agenda item 17A and 17B together, which are the minutes of the Policy and Resources Committee meetings held on the 28th of November 2024 and the 22nd of January 2025. Are there any comments or questions in relation to those minutes? Then they too are duly noted. And that concludes the meeting for today. Thank you all for your time and your constructive and collegiate engagement. The next scheduled meeting is due to take place on the 18th of December later this year. Thank you very much.